So one of the many questions that a lot of us had in season 1 was who were Zeke's parents and where were they? We were given some information about how he grew up and where he grew up. He looked at Drew, Diana and Kane as just more than his cousins, but more like brothers and sister. And ever since season 1, we've seen Monet being very overprotective of Zeke, more so than any of her kids, which we initially thought just came down to Zeke being her way out of the game. But as we learn in episode 4, he's more than just her way out of the game, because he's also her firstborn, and I really don't think many of us expected Zeke to be Monet and Mecha's son. But there are still so many questions that the Power fans have. For example, does Lorenzo know Zeke is Monet's son? And how can Zeke be Monet and Mecha's son? Because the timeline of events doesn't seem to add up. So in this video, we're going to rewind it back to season 1 and dive deep on what we know about Zeke Cross, his age, as well as everybody else's age, the timeline, and see if we can make sense of this. And we all know putting the timeline of Power together can be very tricky, but I'm sure together, along with you guys in the comment section, we'll figure it out. So as usual, I'm going to present all the facts of what we know, and the key details, and how Zeke is Mecha's son, because there were still a lot of people confused, and thinking Mecha was talking about Kane at the end of the episode, so we're going to clear that up as well. So stick with this video till the end so you get a full picture of the timeline. But of course, if you're new to the channel and you haven't done so already, then remember to smash the subscribe button if you want to see everything Power Book 2 Ghost and Power Universe related. But let's start with the age of all of her kids, because this is key in determining why Zeke is Monet and Mecha's son and not any of the other kids. Now, when we were introduced to the Tejadas, we were introduced to them as Kane being the eldest, then Drew, and I thought Zeke and Diana were a similar age. But after double checking this, Zeke is 23, Kane is 22, Drew is 20, and Diana is 19. So Zeke is the oldest out of all of them, and this is key because Monet and Mecha's conversation in episode 3, Monet mentioned that they hadn't seen each other in 24 years. So Monet seemed to have got pregnant with Mecha's child, and then he left without knowing so. And this was before she started her life with Lorenzo, who she had Kane, Diana, and Drew with, and she sent Zeke down south to grow up with other family before she got with Lorenzo. Now, one of the main questions was, how can Zeke be 23 years old and be a freshman? Because normally freshmen are 18, just like how Tariq turned 18 in the first season of Ghost. Now, Lauren mentioned in the first episode of season 1 that most of the freshmen have Professor Carrie Milgram as their student counselor, and she was also Zeke's counselor. So how can Zeke be 23 years old and be a freshman? I guess you can say, do you really have to be 18, 19 years old when you start studying at college? Because you do get a lot of older students and students who enter college later on in life. Let's not forget, Zeke is not the brightest of kids. He mentioned to Tariq in the very first episode of Ghost that the schools that he went to never wanted him to read, and his character description from season 1 told us that unfortunately the drive that kept his mind on the court kept his focus away from the classroom, so he must rely on Tariq's tutoring to keep him off academic probation at Stansfield. So it seems like he was always one to be behind on his academic studies. Now the other question is, does Lorenzo know that Zeke is Monet's son? And the answer is no. It's clear that he doesn't know, because Zeke is the oldest out of all of them. She had Zeke before they got together with Lorenzo, and then they had their 3 kids. And her conversation with Lorenzo is key in episode 4 as to why he doesn't know anything. Now, she went to Lorenzo with the hope that he'd help her remortgage the house to raise $1 million to pay for Davis McLean, but he refused. But he would have done it for any one of his kids. But he specifically said to Monet, Zeke is your nephew. And to me, this tells us that Lorenzo has no idea that Zeke is Monet's son from a past relationship before they got together. And they've been together for 22 years, which was raised in the conversation between her and Diana. So just keep that in the back of your minds. Now, he also told Monet that when you're going to think about our family first. And ironically, that's what she's doing. He just doesn't know it yet, because you can bet he will find out. And shit will definitely take a turn for the worst for not just their relationship, but for the Tejadas as a whole. And does Lorenzo even know about Monet's past relationship that she had with Dante Spears? I doubt he knows about this as well, and I wonder how he'll react when he does find out. But let's run through the events of episode 4 and just clear up that Monet and Mecha were indeed talking about Zeke and not Kane, because there were a few people confused and thought Kane was the son of Mecha. Now, in simple terms, he's 22 years old, so it's pretty much impossible for him to be Mecha's son, because Monet had Kane with Lorenzo after Dante left her life. Now, in episode 4, the Tejadas were scrambling for $1 million to save Zeke, and Kane made it clear to Mecha that he had a family emergency and they had to raise $1 million for Zeke Cross's lawyer. And notice how Mecha questioned him, and this Zeke, he's your brother. But Kane confirmed that he was his cousin, and in the back of Mecha's mind, he was probably thinking, fucking Monet, she's not only lying to me, but she's lying to Zeke and her kids. And at this time, Monet still owed Davis MacLean his money because after the TV interview, she told him to keep working on Zeke's defense and she'll get him his money. And what changed this was Mecca. Now Zeke is very well known, and even more so after the TV interview that he had to do. And Mecca would have seen this and realized that this situation was bad. And when Kane rang him to tell him that he needs to leave town, that's when he paid Davis MacLean the $1 million, which of course led to this meeting between Monet and Mecca, where Monet still maintained that Zeke was her nephew. And how would she be able to explain to Lorenzo that another man paid $1 million for Zeke's lawyer, but he said that he had to do to protect our son? And this is when it dawned on Monet, because she didn't even deny what Mecca said. But Mecca didn't care that she lied and didn't tell him about their son. He wanted to be there for Monet and give her the life that she's always wanted, and he made her a promise that he'll take care of not only her, but her kids and their son, Zeke. And it really does seem that he's won Monet over, and it's going to complicate a hell of a lot of things within the Tejada household in so many ways. And now you can look back over and how protective she's been over Zeke across season 1 and season 2. It definitely makes sense, especially how she was willing to sacrifice Kane for Zeke when she told him to let them find Ramirez's body. Zeke is her firstborn, and she'll always have that bond with him and want to protect him, just like with Drew and Diana. But she's more protective with Zeke because he's her golden ticket out of the game. Now her exit strategy also starts to make sense because she'd have her kids Zeke, Drew and Diana playing all of their positions. But I questioned, where was Lorenzo and Kane in her plans? And they weren't in her plans because they're expendable and replaceable, even Kane, because she can't trust him. And with Lorenzo, she clearly has a type, as you can tell, and she can find what she doesn't have with Lorenzo in someone else, for example Mecca, because at the end of the day, she wants to come out of her life and feel protected. But I really do feel sorry for Zeke. He's been lied to his whole life about everything. His cousins are his siblings, his aunt is his mum, and his dad is Mecca. And this situation reminds me of how Rack lied to Kanan for all of his life on Raising Kanan about Detective Howard. Both mothers have pretty much done the same thing, although they'll argue what they did they had to do to protect their kids. But Monet is really about to get the biggest shock of her life, because this is a huge detail in episode 4, which hopefully you guys picked up as well. We know that Diana was the one to take the money from the safe to pay for MacLean, but when MacLean came to the Tejada household, he acted as if he met Diana for the first time, when in truth, they're working together behind the scenes on Lorenzo's release. This is all behind Monet's back, and she doesn't know anything. So Monet will have the biggest shock of her life when she sees Lorenzo free, because you can bet he's gonna slip out just like Kanan did, and Diana's gonna help him, just like Sean did with Kanan. And we all know who Diana's gonna side with, because she's Daddy's girl, but who are Kane and Drew gonna side with, and how will Tariq play a role in all of this as well? If you thought things were a mess now, just wait for Lorenzo to be released, because it's gonna change the whole game for Power Book 2 Ghost Season 2. So that's all things Zeke and the timeline of events, age, and all the details that we know from Zeke Cross's character, and how Monet and Mecca are his parents. And I really can't wait until he finds out, as well as Lorenzo finding out, because this is going to turn into one huge war between Mecca and Lorenzo. But as usual, drop all your comments down below in the comment section, and let me know your thoughts on the timeline, the events, and the age of Zeke, and what the future could hold. And of course, if you're new to the channel and you haven't done so already, then remember to smash the subscribe button if you want to see everything Power Book 2 Ghost and Power Universe related. But as always, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.